G'day listeners and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Australia podcast powered by Australian Property Scout Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and today, guys, I'm joined back in the studio by two of the best. That's me and Paulie. Mate, you're back. How are you, buddy? Good to have you back.
Nah, it's good being back here. The two Melburnians. Hopefully we can 2v1. Hopefully we can get you.
I don't know, man. I don't know how that's going to go. We'll have to go for a bit of a wrestle after, mate, and see how that goes. But man, how'd you go? How was the feedback post round table, man? How'd it go? First potty done and dusted.
No, it was good, man. Yeah,
feeling good.
Yeah. All the nerves are sort of gone. So we'll see how we go today.
Perfect, man. Perfect, mate. I'm excited to dive into today as well, man. And Big Jimmy, mate, up from the south as well. You guys drive up, fly. What was a boat?
Yeah,
I ran up. I don't know.
Mexican cartel. You ran?
Yeah, I was on his shoulders. And
must have been a good supply of food on the way.
Good to be up here, Sammy boy, and good to have Paulie back in the studio due to popular demand. I'm curious, what did the wife think of your performance on the podcast? That is.
Yeah, well, Sammy gave me a 3 and she gave me a 10. So
hey!
we averaged to a 6.5.
10 out of 100 or?
10 out of 1,000.
Does the wife does she listen to the podcast?
Yeah, every single one without fail.
Does she really?
Nah. I just send her the contracts and she just signs them.
Oh, how good.
Who better to help us with this topic than the great man right here?
Mate, 100%, bro. And I'm excited to sort of unpack this thing as well because it's something that we've obviously witnessed across the board. Paulie, probably you and I, a little bit more hands-on in terms of actually on the market, on the ground, and seeing what's sort of coming from it as well. But what we're going to be discussing today, guys, is how buyers agents have changed the Australian property market. And literally, if we look at the transition, even since obviously APS was first came to fruition back in 2019, compared to how the market is now, the level of BAs that were in the market back then to how they are today. So I'm expecting a bit of a punchy episode, guys, as we go through this, punch out sort of the key points around this as well, and really make it clear really how much the game has changed now compared to where it was, back in 2019, 2020 and beyond. So, and before that as well. So I think it's going to be, man, interesting one to unpack.
Absolutely. Now, before we go into the nitty gritty of this, because Paulie, this is your second time on the podcast. Obviously, an astute investor, multiple figure portfolio, absolutely crushing it. But just before you got into the BA side of things, give us a bit of a snapshot as to your background and what did you do before working at APS?
Yeah, so
he's Greek. He worked in Santorini at the wineries.
So it started off in a souvlaki shop in Athens.
Fresh off the boat.
I was buying gyros. I was like, this guy sold me a kebab so well.
With some ouzo.
Yeah, some ouzo, some extra tzatziki. And then I ended up here.
52 euro later and for €1 and then he was signed up.
So anyway, so you tell us a bit about you previously, because you have had real estate experience.
Yeah.
So just give us a snapshot.
Yeah, so pretty much came out of year 12. I did a commerce law degree at Monash University. While I was doing that, I knew that it just wasn't the path that I was going to follow. A couple of my best mates at the time, they still are in property and property development. And I was actually going to go down the real estate agent sales path in residential. And then a couple of my mates sort of talked me into the commercial side of things. And then at the time, well, they still are around. There was a large commercial agency in Melbourne that traditionally focused on big subdivisions and farm rezoning sales, both on the front end of the initial land sales and then the back end product as house and land packages. And they were starting up a new division selling infill development sites in all around Melbourne. But our first pocket was a northern. It was in the city of Moreland, so Brunswick East, Coburg North, those sort of suburbs. And I did that for about 3 years. So in those 3 years, I sold a large variety of assets, large tenanted investments. So I sold the Harley Davidson on Sydney Road in Brunswick, which I think it's now developed into a 7 or 8 story building. A lot of industrial rezone plays, just standalone land for development, all sorts of different things. But through that, I met a lot of builders and developers. So I thought I was going to go down the building and development path, which is what I did next. So I left the commercial real estate sales role and at the same time I finished my comm law degree, got admitted, but then I went down the building and development path, and then worked for about 3 years under a builder as a labourer and a site supervisor, and then worked towards my unlimited domestic building license, my DBU, which I got. But because I was very hands-on on the tools, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I realized it just wasn't sustainable in the long term to build wealth that way, because the only way that I knew was really hands-on every single day on site, 6 days a week, heavily, laboring. And then I knew at that time I was listening to the podcast, and I realized that this was probably the way, the best way to create wealth. So then I thought to myself, if I'm going to use this method to create my wealth, I might as well work in the industry, because I'm hitting two birds with one stone, and I'm using my time as efficiently as I can. And then I just reached out to Sammy, because I was listening to the podcast religiously. And then went through a few interviews and came on as an associate, and then the rest is sort of history.
It's funny too, man, because Paulie, when I sat across from him, he'd emailed me once the first time, and it was at a time where I was just in so many different places in the business, missed the first. And he then interviewed, this is a couple of months later, interviewed with another BA as well.
Yeah.
And then I think at the time they said, to do it, you're going to have to come to Sydney or something. Yeah. There was only 2 BAs he wanted to work for, or was willing to work for. And then did you send me a second email? Yeah, you sent me a second one?
So what happened was, I had an initial call with the other residential BA, and there was the commercial BA too.
Yeah.
I went and met the commercial BA because he happened to be at the Melbourne Property Expo. And then the second residential BA, aside from, APS, he said I had to come up to Sydney for 3 months to learn their processes, and then he was happy for me to come back and work in Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
So he got back to me, and then the next day when I was meant to call him back to organise sort of next steps, that's when Cody reached out to me, and then I went down that process.
It was funny too, man, because when I sat across from Paulie, there's not too many people that I look at and I think to myself, we might be onto a bit of a mini me here with what was coming through. And that was probably my biggest thing of wonder if we're going to butt heads, obviously, working together as well. But then it's turned out we work so bloody well together. And the way we've sort of built a lot of things together as well has been super, super, I think, impressive to watch. Even myself sort of reflecting back on the value Paulie's brought in and what we've been able to build him into as well. So it's cool, man. And to throw something in there that I don't think we've mentioned yet to date, at the REB Awards, most people would know that we're up for obviously multiple REB Awards at the start of this year. We're actually up for 5 awards. So it was BA of the Year, that was myself. Buyers Agency of the Year, obviously for APS. I think Mentor of the Year was myself. Yeah. And then Paulie was up for Young Gun. And Rising Star in the industry as well. So they're 2 of the biggest awards in the industry. And when I look at the people it is what it is from an awards perspective. I do get salty. Let's be honest. But I get salty when I look at facts. And the one thing with the resi sales side of things is it's very well known what people actually transact on. They have to be very vocal about it because they need to be seen as the number 1 agents in the areas. So when people win awards like Young Gun or Rising Star or whatever, you can see what they've actually transacted on and done. And when you put it in comparison to the work rate and obviously what Paulie's done and built as well, to say how salty was an understatement, let alone versus the other stuff we didn't pick up as well. So, but yeah, Paulie was obviously up for the double that night as well. So it's cool, man. It's cool what we've built together over the last few years too.
And if I could just ask you, Paulie, so what made you choose APS over the other 2, just out of curiosity?
To be honest, I think I think the same thing that draws a lot of clients, just a no bullshit approach, and just an approach that just makes sense. Like I know we say, like, as a joke, we talk a lot of Fugazi, but just literally just a no bullshit approach. That's what drew me to APS. And just the content I thought was high quality, and I agreed with the strategy. That the buy and hold strategy just does not. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it is just magnitudes less in performance than what we do when you compare the 2 outcomes, and it just resonated with me. At the time, it resonated with what I was trying to achieve, and I thought this is the company that I want to work for.
And what made you think buyer's agents, this whole topic is how have buyer's agents changed the investing landscape? So from your experience.
Sorry, I thought this was Paul Dem life story.
Yeah.
This is your life.
My parents and my wife.
I was waiting for it.
I'm a kebab dealer in Athens.
No, the euros. I thought this boy had to sell. He got the tzatziki.
Because I think the backstory is interesting as a preface for, because you've obviously been around property and investing and commercial property. So I'm just curious, the buyer's agency, because the whole topic is how buyer's agents have changed the investing landscape. What was the tipping point for you to understand that a buyer's agent was the key?
Time. I think that was the biggest thing. That was okay. There's a couple of things. The first thing I think was time. If you're time poor, you're not going to be able to compete. It's literally impossible. And the second thing I would say is market selection and timing. So those two things were the biggest reasons why I knew I wanted to use a buyer's agent.
And the funny thing is too as well, like we live, eat and breathe this stuff. Like you boys got in last night, like we were sitting there having a chat, literally talking about market cycles, sales, selling, reinvesting, different areas and moving into all the rest of the sort of thing as well. Like we're literally doing this at 11 o'clock, at night, like over dinner and a few drinks or whatever, like going through all this stuff, like how important that actually is to get right. And we're not just like looking in the back of a magazine or we're listening to some podcast or reading some report or something like that. We're going through layers and layers and layers of data and understanding the cycles from my 16 years of experience plus everything else that I've learned over all the years as well, and overlaying it with all the different things that we know and implement and just overlay on top of all that from a data perspective as well to then select areas. That's why, when Paul is saying there that the two pieces of it, obviously the market selection piece, also then learning how to buy like an absolute expert, but then also that time poor perspective as well. That combination of those three is effectively like it's the trifecta of why most people I don't think should. I actually believe why 100% of people shouldn't be out there trying to buy themselves anymore. Yeah,
and that's without even mentioning the ancillary benefits of the strategy piece, the exiting piece, the broker referrals, the accountant referrals, the things like the summit, the education piece, like they're additional benefits that we're not even mentioning. Yeah. But they're the three main ones, I'd say, for sure.
And I agree with you on that as well, because it was like we said in the round table, when we're talking about the round table, the way that we view APS now is, yes, we have buyers agents within the business, but we look at it as a wealth creation company, and we don't sell that, right? We don't sell, wealth plans or the rest of the bullshit or financial advice or take clips from accountants and brokers and everyone we send it to. That's all part of our ecosystem. We look at it as a genuine wealth creation company, not just a BA company, not just a buyer's agent with one direct service, because that's just a transaction. And that's not obviously what we're about. We're about obviously that longer term wealth creation that's built as well. So I think it all feeds into and multiplies off this as well. But it's obviously the actual execution and lifeblood piece is what we're talking about, which is the BA route, the buyer's agent route. And yeah, boys, let's dive into obviously, why we think it has changed the market so much.
Can I ask you both, like 10 years ago, Sammy, almost nobody used a buyer's agent, right? Why has there been such an explosion of buyer's agents in the business, in the industry? What do you think?
Man, I think just more awareness has become around it. I think leading into COVID, there was a bit of a shift already coming about. I think a lot of the old heads that have been doing it for a long time had lost a lot of respect in the industry. So guys like the bloke that I got burnt by, there's a lot of other big names. Pretty much everyone, especially that was before 2019, 2020, that were known well before, let's say 2020, before COVID, all of them has sort of sullied their names by just becoming super transactional. All the big ones that used to be respected became super transactional, just had their eyes on the dollars and just like they'll tick and flick. They're just doing deals, just churning and burning. I didn't hear about anyone that was supposed to be good. And like by the time I became a BA, it's funny because a story started coming out across the board of everyone getting burnt and so many BAs starting, especially people like myself, going out there and actually starting a BA because they got burnt by a BA, because all the big names that were there at the time that were seen as this anchor that everyone went to, they'd fleeced everyone, or they just turned into that transactional company. So it spawned people like myself sort of back in the day. The one difference was I had already built a portfolio during it. didn't actually transact because I knew well enough that was a shit deal, and then kept actually building extremely hard off the back of it. So, but I think that lesson and what had happened with me during that process as well was it just built my moral compass dead straight. The beauty was, thankfully, I also had a great team around me that allowed me to learn the strategy piece, so I could still keep executing high quality deals, but then, obviously be able to do it on scale and on volume regardless of income. So I think that transition of so many big name shit BAs being in the game and then not really being that many little players kind of working their way up, it just kind of opened the door for a bit of a change to come in around that side. And I think what we're going to dive into here around how they have changed the market, I think it's because now the volume of those that have come in, and then by the time people are out there trying to actually buy properties themselves now, if you're trying to compete in the same market where buyers agents are super prevalent, you're getting the dregs. You're probably getting the final 10 to 20% of stock that hasn't either been bought by the very few good BAs that are out there that build great relationships, get access to great deals, and transact on the best stuff first, that then gets filtered through to the next that's probably a decent volume BA that'll pay decent money. But a lot of time they try and avoid taking anything average on condition-wise. So then that gets passed to the next level of BA that probably just doesn't give a fuck or doesn't understand. And then if it goes through those levels of BAs, then it goes to market, which undoubtedly, the amount of hands that pass through first, someone typically buys it, especially once the market's heated up. So whatever's actually going to market now, and this has probably been away for probably the last 2 to 3 years in the investment markets once they heat up, once it passes all the way through to that, you're typically getting the dregs or the most overpriced stock. And when I say dregs, I mean dregs in two scenarios here. Either the stuff that no one wants to take on because of the riskiness of the project or the property, or the price. So it's typically one of the two things. Price too high, or properties in too average a condition, and in combination with price probably being too high as well on an asset like that too. So I think the real prevalence has come out over all this time from that, has really built it through, but then it's become, the industry's even sort of almost propelled itself to this huge level now because it's become so hard to actually transact on property in Australia because so much is bought off market now.
Yeah.
So it's been this huge shift, which I think has just been self-propelling year on year, because it is becoming so hard to transact as an everyday Australian.
So just
investor.
for the novice person out there, what we're making an assumption is that real estate agents would much prefer to deal with the buyer's agent than the retail market.
Of course.
And just to explain, why is that the case?
Because you're dealing with someone you should be dealing with someone that's a professional on the other end. They should have a ready stream of pipeline of clients. So again, you look at the everyday investor, right? Let's say he's a first timer, or he's maybe they have bought a few times before, but they could either be a ball breaker or they're just not going to be a repeat buyer. Yeah. Most people only have the ability to buy 1 or 2 properties. If you've got someone who's buying 1, 2, 10, 20 a month or something like that, and they're just that consistent avenue that you can sling deals to, all of a sudden now you only need to prospect and get access to deals. You don't now need to go and sell it on the other end, which used to be 60 to 70% of the transaction was actually handling the sale and the buyer. That's now being taken off your hands. So how much more money can you make when that 30% actually turns into 80%? And now you're working with someone who's got a vested interest on the other side to keep a deal together and go through as well.
And I bet you find that, Paul, just due to your experience now as the head BA and the amount of deals that you're coming across, the confidence that the real estate agent has in you in terms of getting the contract executed efficiently without any bullshit, without any hassles, just makes them want to deal with you.
Yeah, I think if someone's, so anyone can go into the market and they can try and buy a property, but they're not going to understand the landscape specific to that market, because there are things that are considered quote unquote the norm in one market that are not the norm in another market. And I think understanding those differences very deeply allows you to transact quote unquote easily with these agents, not just on one deal but at scale. So then when you're able to do it at scale, you're a lot, it's like an easy transaction a lot of the time for these agents. And their ability to repeat that business makes them want to work with you, as opposed to a one-off transaction.
For sure, it's absolutely key. And Paulie is key at building relationships and maintaining relationships as well. And that's what's so key. But obviously, we have different ways that we do it, and that's what we've become masters at effectively at APS, and what we just refine and hone. And we talk about sharpening the axe. That's something that we're just continually honing and improving from that end as well. So Yeah, man. When you kind of combine that with, again, that steady pipeline of clients, you can sort of see, of buyers, sorry, that you would, that's how a sales agent would look at it. You got that steady stream from that end. Why would they bother? For one, taking it to market's going to be a headache. So instead of just having one phone call, or potentially, let's say, APS passes on it, it's a second phone call and typically it's done, versus taking it to market. If the market's hot, getting 100 phone calls, dealing with inexperienced people who, potentially will bid the highest, but then crash the contract because they get scared of a bit of moisture in a bathroom or something. You know what I mean? Like all these different things really affect it from that end. So what I've really seen, and probably the biggest change that I've really seen come in from this, instance, and again, we were running through the scenario around this last night, Paulie, was so many of these marketplaces just having zero stock on market, because of the amount that is transacting off market. And so the average buyer might go in there and go, oh yeah, I really want to buy, in this new area. And we're looking at a pocket of an area where we're buying, and there's probably circa 50,000 people. There are currently 15 properties on market for sale across a 50,000 person LGA, and about 12 of those would be under offer. So we're talking, I don't know, somewhere equivalent in, say, Melbourne for you guys, but we're talking 50,000 people population with 3 properties currently on market for sale, actually available.
And how many would be transacting off market?
A lot.
Okay. We don't need to disclose exactly what it would be because, again, it would vary, from location to location. But it's a lot, man. Like a lot transacts off market in that. And when you have such a tight stranglehold, and this is actually a funny thing. We were running through a scenario last night on a property that we passed on at 540, and another BA bought it. We passed on it at 540, and another BA bought it at 600K off market.
Yeah, wow. Which leads me to the next point. So off market, that some people get confused just thinking any deal off market is a good deal.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that, Paul, the pitfalls of not understanding a good off market deal.
I mean, you feel sorry for them, but because it's not their fault. But the naive client who, is engaging a BA with good intentions, that phrase off market has become associated with a deal that is somehow better or under market value. And a lot of BAs, they know that that's the connotation that the market associates with the phrase off market. So a lot of the time when they're sending a deal, quote unquote, off market to their clients, that they are, advertising that deal as being a good deal when in fact it is just way above intrinsic value.
Yeah. Same. What about the retail person as well? I mean, not just the BA.
Yeah.
A retail person might be presented by a real estate agent as off market.
And the problem, one of the biggest problems, especially in an example like the one that Sam just went through, when there's such little stock on market relative to the off-market economy of transaction, they don't know intrinsic value because they're assessing a property's market value based on that example, less than 5% of the data that we have to assess that property's market value. So how can they possibly know what its value is when their pool of comparison of comparables is so much lower than what we have? Because when you transact in this off-market economy so regularly and you're speaking to these agents so often, your access to information is just so much greater. So there's this massive informational asymmetry between us and the retail customer buyer coming into the market trying to acquire something.
Which is like ridiculously important because, like, to recap on that, the level of knowledge we have around what something is intrinsically worth is almost like we just know what everything is worth because we know what everything transacts at. Someone else coming in, and this is the biggest issue at the moment with the amount that is transacting in so many of these locations off market. The average investor won't actually see that transaction hit, say, something like RP data for 5 or 6 months, because by the time it sells and settles, that might be, say, 6 to 8 weeks. 2 months, right? 1.5 to 2 months. Then from there, if it is 100% on time, 3 months later, land titles will register it and it'll get registered in RP data. So we're talking somewhere between typically 5 to 6 months before it actually gets registered and viewed in RP data if it isn't listed as a sold on realestate.com. So, which most of the time it's not. So, man, there is just this massive shift at the moment in terms of what's happening there. And we've seen it play out. This isn't just this year. This has been happening over the last few years where this shift is happening. But exactly as Paul is saying there, in a market like that that's transacting so much, like such a huge percentage off market, if you don't have access to that information, especially if you're just getting that information from a real estate agent that's selling you that property, he's just going to sell you the 3 highest comparables he has in the area and go, I've got a buyer at 590. For you to take this out, you're going to have to be 600K because of these 3 sales, maybe not knowing that, which we do, 12 of the others, and they may be outliers, completely irrelevant, like non-comparable properties, compared to say the 10 to 12 that we might know that are, circa, let's say 550K, as a median, right? So that lack of access to knowledge within that, and then there's pretty much shooting from the hip. You have no genuine idea in terms of what something is genuinely worth in that scenario. So it's almost like the Chinese whispers, you know what I mean? Like you're getting everything behind closed doors, or the Chinese wall, whatever the hell it's called. Like you're getting all this stuff behind the grid. There's a few words I've got to be careful.
Well, I was actually going to say to you is I mean, the term insider trading.
Fuck, that's what I was trying not to say.
No, but
I was trying not to say, Jim.
No, but in most industries, in most industries, that is illegal, right? But the cheat code here, from my perception, right, and you guys are at the front as buyers agents, it's legal because you're getting access to information that other people are not.
Yeah.
So it's not illegal in any way.
It isn't illegal.
That's my point.
It's a dirty phrase.
But that's what I'm saying. The term, the connotation is that it is a dirty phrase. However, if it is legal and you understand how the game is played, then shame on you if you're not following and playing by the game.
Yeah. I think in our team, we like to phrase it as being inside the matrix. Because
call it what you will. I think what we're trying to get to the point for people listening to understand that if you get access to the information because of your skill and because of your relationships and because of your knowledge of the market, then good on you.
It definitely
good
isn't
on
illegal,
you.
man. It definitely isn't illegal at all. It's
It's the ultimate cheat code. Let's face it.
For sure.
Right?
But it's also like a level of work and effort and energy that has to go into it to then produce that knowledge. You know what I mean? And effectively, that's what people pay us for.
100%. I think it's, I mean, the reason why I started working with APS and when Sam explained to me, well, this is what I do, this is all the information coming through, we can get ahead of the game. I'm like, this is a no-brainer. I mean, why wouldn't you? How are you going to compete against that?
Nah.
It's almost impossible, and that's what we're unpacking today. The investing landscape has definitely changed.
Yeah.
I know you've got some more points from your side, Sammy. What other?
I think another one to throw in off the back of this as well, even talking about that, right? And then we talk about increased demand, right? And whether we're talking about dumb money coming in on market or purely like that dumb money that doesn't actually understand the market and bought off market probably 50 to 60K higher than where we actually saw intrinsic value on that deal as well. What can happen so often is, let's say a report is released with an area, labeled, or a podcast is dropped, or something leaks that a certain BA is buying in a certain area that everyone knows is well touted for being able to find correct growth locations. When that sort of thing gets out, and it properly does get out, what we so often see is this herd mentality, this flock mentality. Now, this used to happen with investors, right? And so if that happened with investors, okay, sweet, maybe, 500 investors hear about it, they get all their shit ready, and then over the next few months, they go in there and buy. 500 people is a lot of people, right? And I might just be using a flippant number there. But when you have 100 or 200 BAs who transact at, let's just say 2 to 5 properties a month each, all of a sudden you start talking about 1,000 deals a month. Or let's even say, 500 deals a month, something like that. When you start getting these levels of transactions start to come through, this herd mentality is no longer the herd mentality of just the sheep. It's the shepherds. You know what I mean? It's the BAs being the actual shepherds flow, herding the sheep in and pumping the money into there as well. And we saw it happen so much in Perth. I've seen it happen in Brizzy in certain markets, and now we've seen it happen in different regionals and other cities and everything as well. And I think like that demand that can come in from that controlled buyer pool, where no longer it's a singular investor maybe buying 1 or 2 properties. Now it's a group, or it's, again, let's use that shepherd analogy, coming in with his flock of buyers behind him. Now all of a sudden it's this consistent injection and in media and on steroids, right? So, I think like the change in that, and so often when out of 100 of those BAs, especially if they're just taking it from some report or something, when 95 to 98 of them are uneducated, they don't actually know what they're doing. They might go in with good intentions, but they don't know what they're doing. I don't really care how nice a person you are. If you don't know what you're doing, you're fucking shit at your job. You know what I mean? You're not going to get a great result for your client, and you're probably going to end up paying 60K more than we got the ability to do, which is 10% more, right? And I think this is the thing, man, when that dumb money comes in combined with that herd mentality and that herd buying potential, that's where we just see markets like no longer grow at a 10 to 15% per annum rate, where we see them grow at like 40 to 50% per annum or 30 to 50% per annum.
That for me is probably the biggest characteristic that will define the buying landscape, at least for the next sort of 10 years.
I agree.
Maybe even longer, as more and more people start using buyer's agents, because it's like you have so much more concentrated capital going into the same or similar areas across the country. So it's like, when you have a magnifying glass and the sun goes through it and then whatever's underneath it lights on fire. That's like the analogy that I think of the buyer's agency industry now. But I don't think it's fair, and that's why you have much sharper growth curves, which is what Sam just mentioned, because you have this concentration of capital. But I don't think it's fair to say that it's manufactured or fake growth, because the investors on their own free will are still deciding to put their money in these markets. It's just different. It's of a different nature.
It's an accelerated.
Yes, it's just going to be sharper growth curves. And I think what that's going to do is it's going to make the gap between that buy and hold strategy and that buy, hold, and sell and reinvest strategy even larger.
So you're saying,
I agree completely.
So you're saying that it's not creating property bubbles in certain markets because there's been an over-concentration from BAs?
I genuinely don't believe Australia can move into property bubbles because of the affordability ratios that we run on, that our housing markets run on as well. And typically they're capped. Normally markets will actually cap out from an owner-occupier perspective. Normally investors know there's a point to peel out of, and it's the owner-occupiers will push it to a different level. So I don't think so, because the Australian banking system is so regulated in Australia from that perspective as well. So no, I definitely don't believe that's the case. I think one of the big things to throw in on what Paulie was saying there, he said around the next 10 years, bro, I actually think it's an unprecedented phase we've gone into, which I don't think we'll ever come back out of.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be relevant and relative to the Australian property market moving forward. And that's why I think exactly as you say, they're almost like this isolation of capital. You know what I mean? It's like the magnifying glass on a particular spot.
Yeah.
It's now markets are no longer going to do small little bits here and there. And like this area does a little bit, and this area does a little bit. It's just like boom. When areas get smashed, it goes to a different level, because once a growth rate starts, right? And I think this is the biggest thing. A lot of people in Australia, investors, BAs, all the rest of it, they're very nervous to get into a market first. Okay, so they wait to see a first level of growth. And it's not the worst strategy in the world if you're an investor that's only got an ability to buy one or two properties and you're trying to do it by yourself, or you're a BA that wants to stay in the flock so that you're almost guaranteed a run, right? So a lot of them will start that. They will actually wait to see 10 to 20% worth of growth start in a market, and they go, okay, because 20% is significant. 10% could be a blip. 20% is significant, right? It's a 500 grand property going to $600,000. It's a significant jump. But when that jump comes through, for a lot of them, what we find is it's now confirmation that market is actually genuinely running, and the run is on the board and it has started. So now I know if either I'm putting my own capital in there or if I'm putting my investors' capital in there, I've got a reasonable chance of growth, right? Or of growth moving forward from this point as well, because it'd be unlikely it does 20% and then stops. So I think that's like what we're seeing is a big shift from that. And so, and the real key, making the decision whether you've got the balls to go in early, and are you in an area that actually isn't going to pop off, or do you wait for the safety in numbers and then actually get that guaranteed growth, especially if you're really needing it? My personal opinion, I'm going to throw to Paulie in 1 second. My personal opinion, work with someone that gets access and understands where it's going to go before it goes, because whatever you pay for that BA fee is going to be significantly outweighed by what you think you're going to save by waiting for either a market or picking the wrong market.
Yeah, I think just that point for me, though, it highlights the need to work with the right BA, because going back to what we said earlier, where you have this magnification of capital in certain areas, there's a lot more damage done from the opportunity cost of capital perspective now and moving forward from getting into markets slightly later than what you could have under the right BA. Because we're no longer talking about missing, 5%, when the sharpness is what that concentration of capital is making. You could miss 20% in a very short time period because I think.
And then you're playing catch up.
Yeah.
Well, a
Because then
classic
you're trying to get in.
Yeah.
a classic example of that, the first BA that I used, who you know, a lot of the properties they were buying for clients around the same time I started working with you was in a market that we've only started buying in now in 2025.
Yeah.
So they missed out on all the markets, a lot of the markets that APS were buying in. And all those markets didn't do anything, hardly anything over the last 4 years.
Well, you think about it, your stuff that you would have bought in Brisbane at the time, Perth at the time would have done more than
100%.
more than doubled each of those assets.
Speaking to some of these clients and knowing where they've bought and the time that they bought it using a certain buyer's agent, that opportunity cost. When I tell them about what we were buying and what they've missed out on, they're like kicking themselves because they're so angry and frustrated. And it just goes to show you the difference in a buyer's agent of not understanding which market to be in at that time, let alone the retail market.
Yeah. Just to add to that point, I think if you extrapolate the data out long enough, generally speaking, most suburbs across Australia, we're talking over a 40 or 50 year time frame, will grow at the same rate. And that long-term average is somewhere between sort of 6 and 8%.
Yeah.
Because like in the markets that I've bought in the last 2 years, I wasn't even there for the start of the Perth run, but in other markets, I'm talking on my own investments, growing 50 to 60% in a 12 to 18 month window. So that buy and hold strategy, I'd have to hold that property under that strategy for 10 years to match. Yes, I have some cost for exiting the asset and reinvesting the money, but I would have had to wait 10 years under a buy and hold strategy based on the long-term average of growth to match the growth that I had in 1 year off one asset. And that's without even accounting for the opportunity cost of not reinvesting the equity gain in the intermediary period. So it's like you're talking potentially say 12, once you account for the reinvestment of that equity, 12 to 15 year equivalent under a buy and hold strategy.
Well, this is the biggest issue. We ran through some examples when we did the round table of, some of those markets where people had bought in at the tail end of Brisbane, right? 2007, 2008. They were, and Perth was exactly the same. 2007, 2008 was the end of its last boom. And we're actually buying stuff in 2021 for less than people had paid in 2007, 2008. Same thing as Brizzy. Like we're talking 150 grand less in some examples, some extreme examples, 150 grand less between 2007 and 2009. That's a 12 years that if you had held your money during that time, let alone if you'd sold out at the peak, like if you timed it correctly and bought in 03, 04, sold in 07, bought into, let's say, there was a bit of a gap there with some different. Actually, Adelaide did a bit of a run through the middle of that. But between there, even there and just Sydney in 2013 or Melbourne 2014, but let's say Sydney, you bought in Sydney 2011, 2012 when the market was dead flat. 2013, 2017, the market 120, 150% if you were in the right area. You could have pulled the money back out, gone back into Brisbane, back into Perth with, depending on how much you put into it, it could be 7 to 10x the capital, double back down, and then multiplied it again instead of just waiting for this next boom.
Yeah.
Which was a 12-year dead flat period where inflation would have absolutely decimated it. And if you pulled any equity out, your negative cash flow would have smashed it as well. So the reinvestment of capital during that window of time, and that's why again I talk about us as a wealth creation company, not as a buyer's agents, because that's where exactly as Paul is saying, this longer term buy and hold strategy that so many people hold on to and do, and a market peaks out, but they keep buying there because it's easy and they don't have to change strategy and change all the rest of it. When you don't follow that psyche and that age-old mantra of that bullshit of a strategy, of just a lazy approach, that's where you can literally, in that time that the person's waiting for the next cycle, you have retired yourself.
Yeah, and we touched on it, we touched on it in the last podcast too, but that's why I just have no empathy for these other BAs who advocate that approach. Because to me, it's the get out of jail free card when a client has made no money for 5 to 10 or 15 years because that BA can just hang their hat on the fact that it's a buy and hold strategy and it's a 20, 25 year play. If the purpose of residential investment, which it is because the yields are not what they are in commercial, to make as much money as you can
in the shortest amount of time.
In the shortest amount of time, it's not even a debate that approach, it's wrong. Like to achieve, if that's your outcome, that is the wrong approach. It's not even, I can't even empathize with it because there's no credence to it whatsoever when you compare the two approaches. then people go on about, suburbs in Sydney like Vaucluse or Point Piper, which have had these astronomical gains. 99.9% of people can't access those markets anyway. And I think people with the buy and hold strategy does suit a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of people who have so much money that they just, because of ease, want to concentrate that capital. If that same person, though, took that money and used our strategy, they would still make significantly more.
100%.
But it just becomes a trade-off then between the ease of concentrating it into like one house as opposed to, because you'd have to buy hundreds of homes for that same capital using this approach, but they would be way better off.
If you're trading and treating the portfolio like a business. I think it all really depends what it comes down to, or like the way you want to invest from that aspect as well. But the only people that should be buying that sort of stuff, even then, again, like you're saying, you could make significantly more. But the only people that should be buying it, at that sort of asset is people worth 9 figures. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
literally.
why are you buying a $10, $20 million investment? The other thing to throw on the equation, man, is I think a lot of things get warped by knockdown rebuilds and resales like that as well, especially that top end of town.
Yeah.
You might buy something for $8 million and then you knock it down. And then you rebuild you spend 15 mil on a build and then you sell it for 30. Yeah. All right, developer just made 7, but they just actually changed the median just then by $22 million. But no one they see the jump, but they don't factor in the build and actually the value, the equity that was created during that thing as well. And so many areas like that have actually gone through things like that or massive renovations and all the rest of it. So I don't even, this is the thing we in that scenario as well, I don't even agree with the fact that they have performed so much. I think a lot of that has actually been manufactured, which is great, but it's not a true reflection of an actual growth rate in those areas because the biggest thing to remember, exactly as you were saying there, of like the ease of something, right? We look at the ease of something. Look at the ease of me buying my primary residence. I was not going to go out there and hunt a site for 12 months, plan a build for 12 months, go through the build process for 12 months, 2 years, so 4 years total. I was never going to go through that. The ease of buying the finished product, which in an area like that of doing a knockdown rebuild or a buy and a renovation and sell for 30 million, that example I gave before, the clientele of the end user of that product in that area every day of the week would take the ease of transacting and buying that property rather than actually going through that process themselves. So because that transaction is actually trading from 8 to 30 million and the amount of properties that transact in those areas are actually so low, the actual movement on the median value is significant because of transactions like that. But they don't factor that into it. All we're factoring in is a median. And when you factor a median in, it can actually very, very much be warped from that perspective. And that's why individual suburbs, if you're actually going to drill down and try and prove something like this, and I don't even know this absolutely for a fact, but I can just almost guarantee that, these huge jumps that people talk about from this perspective, because again, knowing what I bought in the sort of blue chip area that I am, people who have done really well in something else, they don't want to go through that process. They leave that for a developer to make their money in. They've made their money somewhere else. Like myself, portfolio, business, bang, buy something like that instead. Finished product. So that's where there'd be these huge shifts in it. It wouldn't be just purely from a growth rate perspective.
Going back to your point, like the topic is how buyers agents have changed the investing landscape, right? And we clearly understand access to stock, getting into the right markets, and there's a lot of things that a buyer's agent would achieve over the retail investor. But what you're doubling down on is not every buyer's agent is the same. So don't just think that buyer's agents have changed the investing landscape for the best. If you have the wrong strategy and you don't understand the velocity of money and you don't understand entry and exit, then the buyer's agent could be doing you more harm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'd agree.
And we've spoken about that a lot. Not every buyer's agent.
I genuinely believe the average investor, it's a tricky one to say this exactly, but I think from an actual location perspective, I think a lot of average investors could pick exactly the same location at the same level, if not potentially better than some BAs are out there, because so many of them actually have absolutely no clue. And if there weren't as many BAs out there, they'd probably be able to get access to more staff. But this is the issue as well. Them going in, not actually understanding market value and overpaying for shit as well, is causing a lot of issues in the market too. So I think this is where we're just seeing this huge shift of now a huge amount of properties transacting off market, huge amount of dumb money being spent because they don't actually understand or know what they're doing from that perspective either, and actually shutting out the retail investor from being able to do what they used to be able to do. I look at myself back, 20 property portfolio in my 20s. I never would have been able to do that if the market was where it is right now. In all honesty, like just being dead honest with
all the players, you mean?
Yeah. There wouldn't have been enough stock for me to negotiate as well as I did as a 20 3-year-old, whatever it was when I was doing 22 when I was buying blocks of dirt and all the rest of this sort of shit. I wouldn't have got deals as good as I had if there was this volume of BAs that are currently in the market that are uneducated. So there's uneducated, dumb money pushing up the market in different areas, or just putting that additional demand and pressure on different markets in different areas, which then gets supported by the local buying pool. Because then they start competing against them as well. It's exactly as Paulie's point before. It's just bringing growth cycles on earlier, based on hedges.
What would you say to some people, some retail people that are frustrated that buyers agents are making it more difficult for them to actually compete?
Use a good BA, because you're not really going to be able to change it now. The wave has come, the wave has started, and it's not going to get slowed down.
So you either play the game how it's played at the moment to win, or you miss out.
Well, it's a free market. You decide how you want to play. But if that's how you decide that you want to play the game, don't complain on the back end, because you have the opportunity to play it another way.
And I think about, we're all investors, right? And I think about the amount of money spent on BA fees to do these deals. And if you look back and think, would you do that again? You would buy double the amount of properties knowing the results that you've got. So it's that law of exchange.
I can honestly say, and I say this without a shadow of a doubt, like if I go back to the very start, and maybe not on my first one because I literally didn't have enough money, but on the second deals and moving forward from there, every day of the week, if I knew the level that APS operates at, if I genuinely knew the level that APS operates at, I'd give all of it away and not give it away. I'd give them the money, give APS the money and pay the fee, but also let them invest it. Show me how to actually invest as well. Because I look at the amount of investors that got themselves to 3 to 5 properties in a 12 to 24 month window. Man, it took me 6-7 years to get to that point because I didn't understand the game. Yeah. So it's now understanding the game at a completely different level that can help you scale. Again, it shouldn't just be about the transaction. It should be about how do we actually build you significant wealth. It's not the 1, it's the 3 to 5. And then what are we doing beyond that point as well? And that's the game changer, man. That's the level that in my mind can't be competed with alongside the execution at the most elite level in the business.
Yeah. And I don't know, obviously you don't go into specifics on the business numbers and things like that. But at the end of the day, I know how high the percentage is of clients who return to APS. Why would that percentage be that high if they weren't making money? They wouldn't use us again. But it's so high that the proof is clearly in the pudding. And then the other thing that I'll say about the retail buyer competing with someone like me is that not only is just the wave of buyer's agents in general spiking that growth curve a lot earlier and a lot steeper, making it hard, but because you have so many BAs in these fairly concentrated market, the timeline of a deal itself is significantly more condensed to actually make a decision, go to contract and execute on the deal than it would have been even 10 years ago, let alone 15 years ago.
Why would a real estate agent chase that person up?
They would chase that person up if the property is significantly overpriced and they know that they're going to buy it.
If they would pay 10% more. That's the only time. Yeah. That's literally it, man.
Yeah.
That's literally it. So this is the thing. It's just a completely different level. Look, to wrap up as well, I've really appreciated the insights thrown in there as well. Paulie, man, so much good stuff in there. I think one thing I wanted to sort of round out with to something to finish up. And by the way, again, kind of like we said before, not chicaning, every BA in the marketplace. I just think it's important to understand that, and like I said before, there's people out there with good intentions. Good intentions doesn't mean you know what you're doing. And that's the thing that I just want everyone to have awareness on from that perspective, especially if someone's, say, starting out. Again, I have nothing against people starting out and having a crack and all the rest of the thing. But if someone's just starting out, how much market knowledge they actually have and how many agent relationships, all the rest of the stuff do they have that are as ironclad, say, as what we do out there, just to have the wariness around that side of things too. One of the other things to throw in to really think about additionally is it is an unregulated industry, and it's also you're working with a lot of uneducated players that are playing with your money. If we're talking $500, $700, $1 million, $500,000, $700,000, $1 million out there in the marketplace, you want to make sure you're working with someone that really knows what they're doing, because $500,000 it sounds like it's a flip and throw, and it's $500,000. Think about how long, for people listening to this, how long would it take you to save $500,000, right? And I know we're not talking about completely saving it because we're obviously going to, use leverage, use debt, all the rest of it to invest. But just think about the magnitude of that number. Do you want to put that in the hands of someone that doesn't really know what they're doing? And this is where I think it is so, so important, regardless of someone's ability to buy, how well do they actually know how to place into markets as well? Everything to do with all these fronts. There's so many layers to this thing to get it 100% right, because or even to get it as absolutely close to 100% right as we get, 80, 90, 100% right, whatever, as close as we can get to this thing. Because the higher your percentage is, the higher your ratio that you are in that scale, the more likely you are and the closer you are going to get to guarantee your success and to guarantee your win in this game. And the law of averages take you further and further through as well. So I think it's something really, really important to throw in there, because BAs across all different things. You have owner-occ BAs, you have investment BAs like we're discussing today. You have, obviously commercial BAs, which again could be for owner-occ or investment too. You need to make sure you're working with someone that actually has the runs on the board to do what you're trying to do within all facets of whatever your strategy is and whatever you're trying to achieve.
Do you think, Sammy, that it should be more tightly regulated?
100%. Well, bro, the fact that you can go and do a 3-day real estate course and then go out and go buy a $500,000, $1 million property for someone, you could go out there. If you could convince someone to give you the money to buy a primary residence or even for an investment, go buy a $5 million asset for someone and have no fucking idea what you're doing. That is the dumbest thing I've ever bloody heard. You know what I mean? That someone can literally do that. So should it be more regulated? 100%. And would we be impacted by that? Yes, everyone in the game would be impacted by it, but would it hopefully, provide more safety for people's money, being blown and being put into stupid things? Yes, it should. And I think that's important because we're talking about very expensive things. And for us, I wouldn't be worried about it at all because I put my name on every single deal that goes out the door, and we have a very vested interest in people having great success because we want them to come back through and do more deals and build their whole portfolio. So, man, I have no issues with that. And if it took some average players out of the market or took some sharks out of the market, beautiful, game on. I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's I think for me the biggest thing as well. I can't think of many other industries where there's such a large disparity between such a low barrier to entry and the magnitude of consequence that can come from trusting that person with a decision. There's not many. I
don't think there's any.
Yeah.
Let's think of one that has, you know what I mean? There's nothing else. There's nothing else. It's such a low barrier to entry and to get actually started, but they can control such a, like we were talking about before, if you could, convince someone to give you the ability to buy even $1 million, $2 million, $5, $10 million, something like that to go and buy an asset and have no idea what you're doing. You should have a safety net of obviously a valuation being done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that's what facilitates a lot of these clowns running around, running a market. They got no idea what they're doing. But even if you have valuations, we just sold Rebecca's house in Melbourne last year. The bank val was $100K higher than what I knew would be the realized valuation when you sell.
Yeah.
So people use bank vals to show performance because it's the only objective measure to show that without just pulling a number and saying someone made X amount. But even with bank vals, there's no protection unless you know intrinsic value.
Yes.
Because if we had stripped all the equity up to what that bank val said we could strip, we'd be in $100K negative equity, which we didn't have to pay. So even with that, it doesn't protect you.
Yeah, it's very
You
true.
really need someone who just knows value and what something realized value, because that's all that matters. The money that you get and what goes into your pocket is what matters. Not a bank val doesn't matter when you're selling.
Yeah, so true.
Which goes back to one of the core pillars of what APS does, and that's the education, right? So if you are more educated,
1,000%, bro.
These are the reasons why you can preempt these issues. And if you did have even with School of Property, I remember chatting to some clients and saying, look, even if you did School of Property and you decided to go and use another buyer's agent, guarantee you will not get ripped off because no one will be able to pull the wool over your eyes because you're going to be more educated than them. So if they try and present something to you, you're going to be like, hold on, that doesn't make sense.
I did School of Property for 2 reasons. The first reason was because I wanted our investors to become more upskilled, more knowledgeable, and have that education base to be able to understand what we were trying to do with their portfolio and have a closed doors environment for things that I effectively didn't want to just go to the open public, right? The other half of it was the people that do want to have a crack at doing it themselves or go out there or whatever, I still wanted to give them the education piece so they actually could figure out how to do it. I'm not giving away the secrets on, how to buy like Paul Dem and how the APS team buys. That is the only thing that I'll never put in School of Property. But it's the actual, parameters around even valuing deals. Valuing deals and the strategic piece, understanding, being able to read the room with bullshit artists as well that are out there in the industry, and man, be able to go out there and actually build a portfolio as well. And so the more knowledge that you build around this whole thing, the less chance that you get some shonkster that's going to be able to pull the wool over your eyes in this instance as well. And this is the biggest thing is if you're listening to this, you may have a lot of understanding as well. You might be a regular Scouting Australia podcast listener, but you might have a friend or you might have a family member or something that isn't, and that they're actually liable and they may potentially fall victim to something like that happening as well. There's nothing worse than having the ability to have been able to stop something significant or catastrophic, until you realize after the fact. So this is maybe even a little preemptive check of maybe you're up to date on some stuff, but is there anyone else that that's maybe trying to have a crack at this thing, you actually care about or like or whatever, that maybe needs to listen to this podcast as well, and then potentially have a look at School of Property too, because it's so true, man. Like that education base, the easiest way to avoid serious mistakes is to be as educated as possible.
Yeah,
you still need to take action to get any results, but combined with educating yourself as much as possible, that is the closest way you can to guarantee yourself results, combined with, partnering with people that know what they're doing as well.
And I think like working with a company like APS, you're protected by the education on two levels, right? So you got, say, the macro level of education, which is strategy and, timing, entering, exiting, and just everything to do at the high level. But then you're protected at the micro level with how educated we are on value in our respective markets. So you're just insulated at both levels by macro and micro levels of education.
I love it.
I couldn't agree more, man. I mean, you know full well. I mean, Paulie, like you and I, man, up how late last night talking about all this sort of stuff.
11:30 in like Sam's kitchen before we went to bed.
And then we're like, man, we better go to bed because we've got potties. I'm gonna be up to go to the gym in the morning. Like we had to go to bed, but we're talking about this stuff because we still eat, live, and breathe it. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh yeah, I've done this, I've made that portfolio is this big, all the rest of it. Bought a nice house. Oh, maybe I'll just go chill and whatever. Like I'm more in it now than I've probably ever been.
Yeah.
And like the APS clients get the benefit of that.
Yeah.
And even like what we spoke about on the round table when we were talking about the commercial piece. Like I get excited when I've got something else that, for one, I can put in my own portfolio. You boys can put in yours, and that we can bring in and implement and put in our clients' portfolios as well to fucking hit their goals, and so everyone can win from this front as well. Because that's what G's me up, That's what really juices me up from that perspective too. So it's mad because everything we've learnt, we get to pass on.
Yeah.
And then everything that's changing that the average investor who's not in it every single day doesn't see, they get the benefit of working with us that gets to, protect themselves, from that as well, armor themselves around the things that they can't see that we do because of the amount of exposure that we have to the market, the industry, the changes, everything, and foresee it. And they get to obviously be the beneficiaries of that as well.
I think we've nailed this topic, Sammy.
I think we're good, boys. I think we're good.
I did have one, just as a side note, because on my notes, we're looking at how things have changed in the investing landscape. Do you see AI? Because AI is a big thing right now. Do you see that? This might be another podcast topic altogether, but do you see it changing the landscape for BAs or just investing in general?
I don't really, man. I don't see the play yet where I think it will seriously affect it. I mean, at the end of the day, man, it's bricks and mortar and people are always involved with it. Yes, like some changes are probably going to come in over the next few years, but like how significant are they going to be? And is it anything to factor into the equation yet? No, I definitely don't believe it is. I think too much of property, I think it will be a long time before it does have any significant impact. And I think everyone listening to this and investing right now, I think the time horizon of where that could have an impact on the property market is so far away that I don't think it's anything we need to worry about. Because I'm always one, I play the cards I'm dealt, I play what's in front of me. Yes, I like to have a long-term view on everything, but if we're working on, okay, you probably should be worried if you're playing a long-term hold and planning to retire in 30 years. Because yes, it probably will affect you in that time frame. But if we're mapping out accelerated, advanced, aggressive strategies for portfolio accumulation over the next 2 to 5 years, to consolidate over the next 3 to 5 years after that, I don't believe you're going to be, impacted by something that may come in a 5 to 10 year window either.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think the one thing I was going to say, it may become prevalent in, I guess, being able to show you the optimal selection of a market at a given time. But the reason I don't think even then it will be relevant is because the way that the BA landscape is moving, it's almost a quasi prediction of human behavior in addition to other things such as data that results in market selection. Okay. And AI will never, I won't say never, but it will be a very long time before AI can predict human behavior.
Yeah,
That lag data that they're relying on. Yeah. Got
It's
it.
just like, how
That's a
are they
good
going to
point.
tell exactly what's going to
That's a
happen?
good point.
For sure. You know,
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's. I knew you could see me looking at you like, you go too far here. But I think it was relevant, and I think we didn't go too deep on exactly what it is. But man, I agree. I'm almost in the same boat as Paulie, as it's we won't say never, but it's going to be an extremely long time. Yeah, maybe when I'm on ice and they can scan my brain or some shit, you know what I mean? Because like otherwise, how are they going to figure out the way? I don't know. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. We won't go further than that. Boys, anything to finish up?
No, I don't think so.
I think it's been awesome to hear from you, Paulie, and your insight. There's no surprises why you've been absolutely crushing it as a BA and as an investor. So on behalf of the listeners, thanks for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom. It's been awesome.
It's been a pleasure, boys. It's been a pleasure. Mate, Paulie,
Thanks,
good having you back in the studio, big fella.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
It's been good. Jimmy, as always, thanks for coming up as well, mate. Listeners, thanks as always for tuning in. I hope you took some great value out of today's episode. If you did, as always, please send it on to someone you know who could take some great value out of this episode and apply it against their portfolios. If you haven't left a 5-star review yet and you're loving the potty, please jump on there on your favorite listening platform, give us a 5-star review and hit that follow or subscribe button if you have not yet. And until next week, guys, that's another Scouting Australia podcast.